All right, James Franklin, he was fired a couple of days ago. I believe it was on Sunday. He got fired. Just crazy how this works. I can't really think of another time in my life where something like this happened where I was just this stunned. I get it, right? And I thought, if he continued to lose, there was a good chance that he was going to get fired. I never thought he was the guy, right? I think we've all known that for a really long time. And, Penn State seemingly every single year, the media wants to act like they're this top 5 team, and you're just like, what? And even this year, it got even more extreme. There was people saying they might be the best team coming into the year, and it just, it really makes you scratch your head. He's been there for a long time. He's won a lot of games. He just couldn't obviously win the big game. Only had the one win, I believe, against Ohio State in 2016. That was borderline lucky. Ohio State has, dominated James Franklin. But you're in a spot a couple of weeks ago. College game day is there at your whiteout. The Penn State whiteouts, supposedly, and I believe it too, one of the best traditions and one of the best environments in college football. And then you're up against an Oregon team who at the time, I thought was the second best team in the country. They're going to get knocked down a little bit. We'll talk about the Oregon Ducks tomorrow on our show. But that game goes into overtime, and then you barely lose that game, right? And then you're like, okay, whatever. Penn State probably still a playoff team. And then they go across the country to UCLA and lose. By the way, that game wasn't really close. UCLA jumped on them early, and it's like, whoa. What in the world happened there? And then you follow it up by losing at home to Northwestern. Your quarterback gets hurt, and then boom, you get fired. All that in a span of 2 weeks, right? You're looking at a team that potentially could win a national championship, or people are acting like they could win a national championship. You got game day there, sold out, white out. The vibes around the team are great. And then 2 weeks later, you are gone. And I just can't remember anything happening like that in my lifetime. But we're going to go through some potential replacement guys. I think there's 4 guys that you should view, that you're picking up the phone, you're trying to talk to these guys, and they should be your 4 priorities, right? And then beyond that, there's one guy that I think is a dream situation, but it isn't going to happen. So we'll break down that name. And then there's 2 names that are going to be candidates that Penn State is going to call and going to interview and going to have interest in that are a mistake. And then there's one final guy that Joel Klatt mentioned, and I know there's a lot of Ohio State people in here, so we're going to discuss him and how interesting that would be if this particular individual were to get the head job at Penn State. But let's start with the 4 guys, and this is the name that everybody is throwing around right now. This would be the home run hit. This would be the splash hire that really, makes a big wave, right? If you are Penn State, that obviously is Curt Cignetti. Hottest name in college football right now, especially on the heels of what he was able to accomplish at Autzen Stadium this past week. His team goes on the road to a place where nobody wins, by the way. Even Ohio State, as great as they were last year, they couldn't even win at Autzen Stadium in Oregon. And you win that game, and it was 30-20, but you punched them in the mouth throughout the duration of that football game. You were the more disciplined football team. You were the tougher football team. You were the more buttoned-up football team. You were the more complete football team. You were the better coached football team in that game. That was an Oregon team that I thought was the second best team in the country, mind you, at their place, and you went in and did that. Cignetti, he's a great coach. You got to give him credit. He's won everywhere he's been, as he likes to point out. He won at James Madison, and of course he's winning now at Indiana. Another one of those Saban guys, right? He was on a Saban staff. Certainly you see some qualities there when you see him coach, but the big question is he going to leave Indiana? And I don't know if he will, and my gut tells me right now that he won't. That's what my gut says. Gut obviously has been wrong multiple times in the past, but Indiana's funding him, right? And that's, I think, a big storyline here is they're helping him out there with that football program. Indiana, obviously, historically a basketball school, but I think they understand, their AD understands what they've got going here, and they're going to continue to help him. And I think they're going to do everything in their power to make sure he stays here. He is from Pennsylvania. Again, he wins everywhere he goes. If you make that hire, if you're Penn State, you feel like, oh, it's a new day, and here we go, right? Now, he is a very ambitious guy. He was at James Madison and then Indiana, and as much as I think he loves his team in Indiana, I think as much as he loves that university, he understands that the Penn State job is a step up from that, right? I think when you're looking at the Big Ten, or I should say like the old Big Ten without, like Oregon and UCLA and USC and those teams, when you're looking at like the old Big Ten, I think Ohio State is the best job, right? It's definitely the most stressful job, but it's probably the best job, right? And then you can throw probably Michigan up there, but I think Penn State belongs in that group. Like, that's a good job. It's a school with a lot of tradition, lots of legacy. They got the whiteout. They got a really nice stadium that they're revamping, by the way. They've got a good AD by all accounts. So I think Cignetti is probably the top priority, but the question is, would he leave Indiana? Beyond that, Matt Rhule, right? Matt Rhule is the head coach, of course, at Nebraska. He's bounced around a little bit. He was at Baylor, had that stint with the Panthers in the NFL, and now he's the head man at Nebraska. His alma mater is Penn State, so that right there is like, well, that's, pretty obvious. And, he was asked about the job, and I thought it was very interesting kind of how he handled those questions. I would encourage you to go look at that clip when he was asked, because he goes on this long thing about how much he loves Penn State and how he feels for James Franklin. He loves his alma mater, and he called it his alma mater a couple of times, but then ends it saying he's fully focused on what's going on here at Nebraska. I think there was a couple of different ways he could have navigated that to, reassure the people of Nebraska that he definitely didn't want the job. I think he very much left that door open. And, again, it's his alma mater. I would assume he wants that job. Nebraska, they fill out that stadium. That's a great fan base. And, I think there is something to kind of bringing back Nebraska football to national relevance. This is once a very, very proud college football program, and I do believe he wants to do that. But just based on hearing him talk about Penn State, it was kind of a love story that he was kind of, relaying there to the media. So I think he's going to remain loyal, obviously, to Nebraska now and his team now, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if he jumped ship and tried to go to Penn State, and that certainly is another name that is at the top of the list there for Penn State. And then two more names. This is the guy that I probably would hire, to be honest with you, if you can't get Cignetti, and that's Brent Key of Georgia Tech. He's the head coach there. Now, I do want to be very clear. I think Georgia Tech as a football team right now is very overrated. Where they're ranked, they're not nearly that good. I get they beat Clemson, but, Clemson, are they any good? Right? Probably not, right? They've lost several games. Hayden King's great. I love watching him. He's a tough, physical guy. At the end of the day, I just don't think Georgia Tech has the funding and the talent, right? I think you'll see that as they progress. Obviously, a weak conference. But they just don't have enough good players. Haynes King's tremendous. He's really tough, but they don't have enough good players. And Brent Key, I think, is a really good coach. I think he's going to establish a really good culture. I don't know if this would be a sexy hire, right? But I think he could go into Penn State, elevate that program, and win. This is a guy that can win big games. This is a guy that has really tough, physical, hard-nosed football teams. And he has football teams that are really disciplined there as well. And I think Penn State is kind of lacking some of that. And also, he's an aggressive guy. I think you could argue that James Franklin, one of the biggest issues with him during his tenure at Penn State is he came into these games with the mindset of trying not to lose rather than go out there and win these games. And I think that bit him in the rear end several times throughout his tenure at Penn State. He's a younger guy, 47 years of age, has the experience as the head guy at Georgia Tech, and another one of those Saban guys, right? He's been around. He was Alabama's offensive line coach, I think, for 3 years, and was a part of a national championship there with that group, was at UCF there before it. I think he's ready for an even bigger job, to be honest with you. And Brent Key, to me, if you can't get Cignetti, is I think the guy that you should be going after. I really have a lot of respect for Brent Key, and I think he would do a tremendous job as the head coach at Penn State. And then the final guy on this list of four of who I think the top four guys should be is Clark Lea. And Clark Lea is, the head coach at Vanderbilt, and he's done a tremendous job. He's been there since 21. It wasn't the greatest start, but these past 2 years with Diego Pavia, that's the toughest place to win in the SEC. Right? You could maybe throw Kentucky in there, but Vanderbilt football, man, was a disaster for such a long time. And to be able to come in there and kind of reinstate them to national prominence, I get they lost to Bama a couple of weeks ago, but Vandy's a top 20 team. If you watch them play, they are absolutely a top 20 team. Clark Lea's done a tremendous job. There's questions, how high can you take that program, right? Can you elevate it more than where it's at right now? Can Vandy really be a team that goes out there and wins a national title? I don't know. I think Clark Lea might have that program at its ceiling right now. I don't know if it can get higher than that. And obviously Penn State would be a significant jump up for him as well. He's even younger than Key. He's only 43 years of age, so he's a young guy. He was the DC at Notre Dame for several years, did a tremendous job there. And that's another guy. I think I kind of go back and forth, Clark Lea or Brent Key, which of the two would you go with? Kind of a coin flip. I lean Key a little bit over Lea. Those rhyme, obviously. That gets a little bit confusing. But Clark Lea's a tremendous coach, done a tremendous job at Vanderbilt. By the way, he filled in for James Franklin because Franklin, of course, was the head guy at Vanderbilt, and then he takes the Penn State job. And then, that's eventually gets taken over there by Clark Lee. So those are those 4 guys that I think should be the top priorities, right? Cignetti, obviously, is the hottest name right now. Rhule is a guy that it just makes sense. Again, it's like basically seemed like he kind of wanted the job, despite the fact he was saying he was fully focused on what was going on at Nebraska. And then Brent Key and Clark Lee, Georgia Tech and Vanderbilt. Those are the top 4 for me. I think if you hire one of those 4 guys, you made a great decision. If you're Penn State. And then another guy to kind of monitor as well, who's kind of that next guy for me. I don't put him in the same category as those top 4, but he is on that next guy for me. That's Dan Mullen. To be completely honest with you, Dan Mullen has done a tremendous job at UNLV this year. They haven't lost a football game yet. He was out of coaching for several years. He was on TV working for ESPN. Obviously has a long run as a head coach. Was at Mississippi State for a while. Won a lot of games there, and then eventually left for Florida. And I don't think that was entirely his fault how things ended. It didn't end well at Florida. Let's be very, very clear. It ended very, very badly. But you look at Billy Napier, like how much better has he been, right? He hasn't done much there at all. I think Dan Mullen's ready for another big time job. To be honest with you, I wouldn't take him over the 4 guys that I just mentioned, but nobody's really talking about Dan Mullen as a potential candidate for Penn State, and that's an interesting one to monitor. I would have them there at that 5th spot. A dream name that's been thrown around a lot is Mike Elko, but he's not leaving A&M, right? So, they're paying him way too much money. He's got way too much funding. In the SEC, like that would make no sense for Mike Elko to leave Texas A&M. I think if you somehow can get him, if you're Penn State, that is. I talked about Cignetti being a home run. If you can get Mike Elko, that's a out of the park home run, right? But I just don't think that's realistic at all. You try to get him, right, but I just don't think there's any way that he would leave A&M, especially with what he's done. And that's a top 4 team in the country right now at A&M. The money that they have is insane. The stadium that they have is insane. It just would be a step in the wrong direction for him. But certainly do everything you can and call. And then 2 guys that I think are going to be in the mix that I don't think should be in the mix. Number 1 is Manny Diaz, right? I don't think, what does he give you that James Franklin didn't, right? He was the DC there for a couple of years recently. He, of course, was the head coach of the Miami Hurricanes for a while. That didn't go well. Now he's at Duke as the head coach, and he's doing a good job there for Duke. I will give him credit there. But if you fire James Franklin for Manny Diaz, what did you do as a program? You fired him, and then you're just going to do the same thing and just be mediocre. And I just don't. Manny Diaz, I don't get that at all. I think they need to rebrand a little bit, a different guy, a younger guy, a guy that's they got to go in a different direction here. You can't just fire him and then kind of do the same thing. And I think that's kind of what you got if you go with Manny Diaz. I think that would be a tremendous mistake. And then Matt Campbell is the other guy that I have paired in this twosome here at the end of the guys that are going to be in the mix that I don't think necessarily should be. I view Matt Campbell totally differently than Manny Diaz. I've got a lot of respect for Matt Campbell. He's done a tremendous job at Iowa State. It's kind of an annual thing, right? When a job opens up, you got to throw Matt Campbell's name in the hat, right? We do this every single time a job opens up. I just don't know if that's, again, kind of similar to the Diaz thing. I think he would do a much better job than Manny Diaz, but I don't know if he does enough. I don't know if it's as big of a splashy hire or as big of a change in direction if you bring in Matt Campbell. I think he would do okay there, and I think the world of him as the coach at Iowa State. He's done tremendous stuff, but I'd probably stay away from Matt Campbell there as well. And then the final guy, and this is interesting. Joe Clapp brought this up on his show as a guy that would be a top candidate for him for the Penn State job, and that is Brian Hartline. And that is very interesting. Obviously, there's a lot of Ohio State people that watch this show. Look, Hartline is, him and Ryan Day, what they do recruiting is insane, right? From a play calling perspective this year for Ohio State, there's been some good things, right? Is it as good as Chip Kelly last year? No, but it's still, a feeling out process. We'll see if they find themselves in a close game, right? I get the Texas game was kind of close, but there was a clear blueprint there if they were just going to keep it close to the vest and make it so they weren't going to make a mistake and let their defense win the game, basically. So we haven't really seen, Hartline in a high-leverage situation as a play caller. As a recruiter, he's tremendous. Clearly the best wide receiver coach in the country. All the receivers that have come through Ohio State, tremendous. And, there was some buzz around him in the past. I think it was the Boston College job that there were some connections with there from him. He said that at some point he would like to be a head coach, and I think he will be a good head coach at some point. And this would be kind of a different direction, right? If you hired a guy like Brian Hartline, it would be a similar type of hire to, Oregon getting Dan Lanning, right? A guy that's never been a head coach, but it's a young guy. It's done a lot of good things, a good recruiter, lots of energy. And you kind of take a chance on him and see what he can do. I think he would be okay. I think he would have some success there. But then the question is, as a guy that is a Buckeye through and through, which Brian Hartline is, he obviously played for Ohio State too. Are you going to go to Penn State, right? And a guy that you've worked so closely with, and Ryan Day, you're going to be an arch nemesis for him going forward. Like, I don't know. They'd give him a lot of money. It would be a great opportunity to win and really show what he's made of. But, be a rival of Ohio State, that just doesn't seem like something Hartline would do. But, again, I do think he's going to be a head coach at some point. I do think he wants to be a head coach at some point, and I do think he will be a successful head coach at some point. And this would be interesting to him because is he ever going to get an opportunity where, he has this amount of funding right away, right? If he gets a head job, it's not going to – like, he could get a head job at Penn State and he's a national title contender. If he goes somewhere else for a head job, is he really going to be a national title contender? Probably not. But just the rivalry there aspect, it would be aggressive, obviously, from Penn State because it's a shot in the dark, right? He's never been a head coach, first-year play caller, and that would certainly be really, really aggressive. But Joel Klatt mentioned that name. It's interesting, but I just think I have a hard time wrapping my head around him leaving Ohio State for Penn State, which is – it's not Michigan, but it might be the next thing there as it relates to that.